Welcome back to the Team to Beat Miami Heat podcast, your one-stop shop for daily Miami Heat content. My name is Amir. Before we get started on today's episode, just want to thank everybody for supporting the channel. Pushing at 3,000 subscribers, so if you guys do enjoy the content, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. So yesterday, Ian Bagley, an NBA insider, said that the Miami Heat are interested in Julius Randle. So he said with the whole Jimmy Butler trade saga, which is imminent and seems like Jimmy Butler will be traded most likely by the trade deadline, which is next week on February 6th. He said, keep an eye on Minnesota in a Butler deal. In the offseason, the Heat were one of the teams that expressed interest in trading for Julius Randle. Per sources, Randle has remained on the Heat's radar during the Butler saga, sources say. I don't know if there are any active trade talks between Minnesota and Miami, but the two teams have been in touch on Butler trades, which is very interesting. So this is obviously one of Jimmy Butler's former teams, and we all know him calling out Towns and Wiggins at the practice, and he played with the backups and dominated the starting lineup and was calling them out for being soft, and he burned that bridge because he didn't get his extension. And it's funny to see that the Miami Heat are calling his old team, and they did show interest when Julius Randle was traded from the Knicks to the T-Wolves this offseason. But, oh, God, please do not trade for Julius Randle. He is fool's gold. Yes, he's a three-time All-Star. Yes, he's a good regular season player and has had a pretty good career, but I don't think he's worth it. One, because we just put Bam Adebayo at the 4. We have Kel'el Ware, who's starting next to him, who is blossoming. Of course, he's going to have his growing pains, but he's been pretty consistent as a starter. And of course, he's going to have a game where he's going to be shooting poorly, not hitting any threes, fouling out, and whatever. But that's going to be far and few in between the great games that he could potentially have or the good games. He's a double-double machine right now. So I don't want to break up that chemistry. We also have Jovic, who is blossoming off of our bench as our point forward. So I don't want to throw in a 30-year-old Julius Randle in the mix. Yes, he has a really good contract, which we'll get into, but I rather play with Bam, Kel'el, and Jovic. Right now, I rather go for a point guard or a 3-and-D type of star to add to this mix, to this roster versus Julius Randle. One, right now, the T-Wolves must be kicking themselves for making this trade. Karl-Anthony Towns has been balling. The Knicks, I believe, are in third place in the East. The T-Wolves were at 11 or 12 at one point this season, which is insane. I think they're back in the top 7 in the West. They're 25 and 21. I know that. But they've been struggling with this trade. They've been losing because of this trade, I think. And Karl-Anthony Towns was a better fit next to Anthony Edwards. So huge mistake from the T-Wolves acquiring him. So yeah, they're 7th in the West right now. And, you know, he's having a down year, Randle, that is, in comparison to his past few seasons, especially when he was an all-star the last 2 seasons. He's averaging 18.9 points per game, which is 5 points lower, 6 points almost lower than last season. He's only averaging 7.3 rebounds, which is down from 9.2 the season before. He's averaging 4.5 assists, which is down from 5. And he's shooting 32%, which is higher from 3 compared to last season. But I don't like Julius Randle, and he is a playoff choke artist. He's not a playoff riser, and he's not really helped his team win. So I'm not a big fan of this. I hope he doesn't get traded to the Miami Heat for Jimmy Butler. I don't think that's a great trade. His contract is great. He's on a expiring deal next season. He has a player option next season for $30 million. So very friendly contract at age 31. So that's one benefit if we were to get him, is that he would be an expiring contract after next season. So this season he's making 33, next season 30. Not bad for a 3-time All-Star and a back-to-back All-Star in the past 2 seasons, but still, I just don't like the fit. I don't like his mentality. I don't think he's a good player. The other piece that I think is interesting as well is that Vince Goodwill has come out and said that the Philadelphia 76ers could be a dark horse team to acquire Jimmy Butler, which I think is ridiculous. And it's ridiculous because he's saying that they could theoretically swap Paul George for Jimmy Butler, which I think would be a horrendous mistake if the Miami Heat did that. Like Paul George having a terrible season right now. The Sixers have been terrible, which I love to see. Just wouldn't be someone that you would want on this Miami Heat team long term. He's 34 years old, injury prone to say the least. Like he last season, I think he played like 70 games for the first time, like in God knows how long. But yeah, Paul George having a rough year, averaging only 17 points per game, 5.6 rebounds, 4.7 assists. So he's good there. And yeah, last season he played 74 games, which was a fluke. Before that, 56, 31, 54, 48. So that is who Paul George is. He's played 30 games this season already, so he's already missed like 12, 13 games. And he's just playing like crap right now at this point. 17 points per game is really low for Paul George. That the last time he averaged under 17 points per game was his second year with the Pacers. Basically, his third season, he averaged 17.4 points per game, but his second season, 12 points per game. So Paul George, like on a horrible contract as well. He just signed that crazy extension. So he's making 49 this season. Next season, 51. 2026, 54. And then he has a player option 2027 at age 37 for $56 million. So absolutely not. I don't think that's a good deal. But let's see what Vince had to say about the Sixers as a potential trade partner with the Heat.
That Philly quietly could be a suitor for Jimmy Butler, and a Paul George for Jimmy sort of straight up, not, I don't think they make exactly the same, but theoretically it would be a Jimmy for Paul George swap. I believe I've heard this, that Joel Embiid, who still loves Jimmy Butler, is pushing for them to reacquire Jimmy Butler, knowing that Jimmy is out there. But here's the other side of that, Jay Adonde. Paul George was told by management or ownership, we wouldn't trade you year one of this deal. So there's so many different iterations. I'm not saying that Joel Embiid is pushing for Paul George to be traded. I'm saying that Joel Embiid is pushing for them to acquire his buddy, Jimmy Butler. But can you even trust Joel Embiid, who can't get on the floor?
Yeah, for Jimmy Butler, is that what you'd want to sign up for? Is that where you would find your joy? He wasn't wearing Philadelphia 76ers colorway shoes, right? He's wearing those Phoenix Suns colorways.
So that's interesting. They said that they wouldn't trade Paul George. If I was Paul George, I'd want to get traded from the Sixers right now. It's not all his fault. Yes, he's having a bad year and a down season, but it's on Joel Embiid, who's the process, the cornerstone, the MVP of this league at times, and this team, of course. They are 18 and 27th, 11th out of the play-in, and that's amazing to see. Joel Embiid, great point by J.A. Donde. Like, it's also on Joel Embiid. He can't get on the court. He's played 13 games this year. Last season, 39. The year before that, 66. The year before that, 68, which was the most in his career at age 27. He's 30 now. He's only getting older. He's 7 feet. He weighs freaking 280 pounds. Like, that's a lot of pressure on your knees, your ankles, and it's going to get worse. And the season before that, 51, 51, 64. Like, he's never played more than 68 games in his career, which is horrible. So it is on Joel Embiid. When he's healthy and he's on the court, he's great, but he's often not available. And so it's not just Paul George's fault, but still, I would not do Paul George for Jimmy Butler. That would be horrendous. The front office would be cooked if they took that trade. I would be very upset if we had Paul George on this team. I love Paul George. I went to Fresno State. I've actually played basketball with Paul George at the rec center many years ago. And, I was playing at the rec center. Paul George came in, and he came in with, I forgot who the starting point guard was at that time. And they played against each other, and they guarded each other, and they played pickup basketball with us. And so I love Paul George. I actually threw him an alley-oop from half court, which is a great story. I was dribbling the ball at the court, and by the time I got to half court, he was like, throw it up, and I threw it up, and he dunked it, which was amazing. So Paul George fan, Not the biggest Paul George fan. I mean, if he didn't go to Fresno State, I wouldn't be a Paul George fan. But because he went to Fresno State, I'm from Fresno, got to root for Paul George. So I don't hate Paul George, but he's injury prone. He's missed the playoffs so many times due to injuries. He's not like a true playoff riser, like a Kawhi Leonard type of player, a Steph Curry, a Kevin Durant, or whoever. I just don't think it makes sense for the Miami Heat to do that. So anyway, that's all I have for this episode. Let me know in the comments what you think will happen with this Jimmy Butler trade saga. When do you think he'll be traded? What team do you think he'll go to? And what assets do you think we can actually get from this trade?